You know, there's a bunch of new stuff out in the news today. One's a report on the United States blowing up that Nord Stream pipeline over there and uh, between Russia and Germany. And there's a couple others that are big deals, all that stuff about President Biden's State of the Union message and everything. You know, I'd like to know, I wish I could figure out what them people really think. You know, I went and reread that Constitution of the United States just to see, because there's all kinds of things in there that people are doing now that we, the people, haven't given them any authority to do. So apparently, we have been hoodwinked, and our whole government has been stolen, it seems like. I don't know, you get back there and I look at that Civil War, and I've read and I know how the stories go, and I see how the history's written about the Civil War. Well, if you get to looking into things that went on before the Civil War, like them terrorist attacks of that John Brown feller, and about that bloody Kansas, and how the anti-slavery people, uh, it was more the anti-slavery people in them days that was doing the attacks. And it was the big businesses up in the North that were causing all the trouble for the South, because the South didn't want to sell their commodities cheap to the North when they could make more money selling them to England and France and other foreign nations. And so the Northerners was causing all kinds of trouble trying to force them to sell and buy products from the North, from the manufacturing and that up there. But you get to go on and you go through, and you understand now, old Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of War, as it was called in them days, he asked Robert E. Lee if he would lead a force down through and go to lead a force into South Carolina and put down the rebellion. And Robert E. Lee said, no, I won't accept that job, because I'm a Virginian and I will not lead troops through my state to go terrorize people in another state. And that's, you can go look that up. That's exactly what happened. And when it all come around, it was the North that invaded the South. That Fort Sumter deal, that Fort Sumter wasn't even built. It hadn't been completed, I mean. It was being built, it hadn't been completed. I don't know whether the North bought it. I don't know whether the federal government bought that land as they were supposed to from South Carolina. But they didn't have cannons in it. And the North started moving cannons from another fort that was there over into Fort Sumter, and that's when the Southerners in South Carolina fired on Fort Sumter. Well, there was already a blockade of Charleston Harbor going on to keep the British and French and other ships from coming in and out with the goods, so well, you figure it out. Now, after the Civil War and the invasion of the northern states into the southern, and they say the Union Army. Well, if those states that seceded were part of the Union, then it really wasn't a Union Army, but it invaded the southern states anyway. And there's questions, you can argue that deal over about it all the time, whether it was legal or not. But yes, if I joined Firefighters Union and I don't like what they're doing, I can leave the firefighters union. Same thing with the electrical workers, same thing with the carpenters union, all that stuff, see. There wasn't any difference. That's what it, but after the Civil War was over, why, those people in the southern states had to make a covenant, a vow, swear to allegiance to the North, to Washington, D.C., I guess it was. Well, now, that don't sound too good, because that means there was no longer a union. Think about it. Them states was gone. They were just counties. They were no longer sovereign states. None of them. New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Vermont were no longer sovereign independent states in a union. They were in, I've decided it's an empire of America, seeing what all these people have been doing. If we don't have occupation troops over there in Europe and occupation troops over surrounding China, I see where President Biden moved all kinds of troops in somewhere over there and got Navy ships over there surrounding China. But I don't see where all this stuff's going. See, I believe in that God and in the Creator, and He created sufficient for everyone. And if we would do things the way we were supposed to, we wouldn't have all these problems. But there are persons who wish. Well, there's a story in Christianity about how we was all in pre-existence, and God made this deal that He had created the earth, and He called that one feller to come be the Redeemer, to be born and become the Savior of mankind, because the way law and justice works in the eternal world. Okay, now this other guy, that Lucifer fella, he said, well, I ought to be the one to do it, and all them people, well, I'll make everybody do exactly what they're supposed to do, and I'll save them all, and you give me all the glory. Well, God's plan was that man would have his agency to choose and do and be tested and be educated, K through 12 on this earth, so that he could advance after death in the hereafter. Well, Lucifer got all upset and left. A bunch of them spirit people left with him. They're down here. That's us Satan and them Satan's minions, Satan's disciples that we hear about. And they're all over the place. I guess there's a whole bunch of them. But anyhow, man's got their agency. We're supposed to be able to choose. We have liberty. That's choose, but take your responsibility for your own bad actions, good or bad. Well, that's not the way it works with these people. They're trying to make everybody be the same. Everybody's supposed to be democracy. Everybody's supposed to do what that fella over there, and I guess they all work for that fella over there in Davos, that Schwab. Don't know how long he's going to live, but anyway. So that seems like the way things are going, and there's something wrong with it. We ain't supposed to be over there telling them people they got to do this, can't do that. We ain't supposed to be sending guns over to Ukraine so they can shoot Russians and Russians can shoot them. We ain't supposed to be down there in Somalia and Ethiopia and all that. Them people, maybe there wouldn't be so many people starving if we didn't send our stuff all over, our ideas all over the place, and have all them warlords that want to make all that money and get rich and live in palatial places and starved people to death. About time the people stood up and took charge. Well, I'll talk later, but think about it.